Hi, and welcome to Business Spotlight Series. I'm Martin Bailey, and joining me today is Ryan Luke, the MD of Heart of Suffolk Distillery. Welcome, Luke, and thank you for taking the time to join me today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely great. Really looking forward to hearing your story today, I've got to say. So,
Thank you.
why don't we start? Why don't we start this whole chat off by you telling us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so as I say, Ryan, I'm managing director of the Heart of Suffolk Distillery, based over in Bacton. We're a company that's been going since February 2018. It was originally set up by my parents, Martin and Karen, who ran it very successfully for a number of years, and then obviously we had the all lockdowns and everything along those lines. So then that sort of prompted me to come in. So April 2022, I left a career in teaching and come stepped in to run the distillery instead.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, how much of exposure you had to distillery prior to that?
I'd very much been. I was always sort of on hand in the background. So I did a few shows with the mum and dad along the way. I did a little bit around the pub trade as well because I used to work in hospitality, especially going through university. I worked in hospitality as a teenager, so I had a few connections there. But beyond that, really, it was a and no business management experience or business leadership experience. So yeah, I'd got people management experience. So I'd become a middle leader and a member of senior leadership team in schools, but I'd not done anything even remotely like this.
So a bit of a baptism of fire then.
Yeah, just a little bit. It was good actually. It was really nice because it was dad was on mum and dad did very different roles in the company. So it was quite nice because I learned different things from different people.
Yeah.
So mum had been a business manager in schools for quite a while. So then she'd taken on that side of the company management, which was good to learn that from her. And then dad had taken on the production side because he's very hands-on, very practical. So he taught me the production side of things. So I sort of did like a hybrid of their jobs eventually. And we're now at the point where they've stepped away entirely. They're out, they still come along and do some shows and whatnot, but they're out of the company on the whole. And I've now got a new business partner called Tom, who uh, I do a lot more of the sort of day-to-day stuff, and then we both work alongside each other on the operational side of things.
Ah, right, okay. So it's Tom bought into the company, or is he just, yes, he's bought into the company.
Yeah, so yeah, he basically we did a little bit of shifting around, but basically, mum and dad completely come out both in terms of shares and involvement, and then Tom sort of come in and
Okay.
as just as the second person.
Yeah, fantastic. So how do your roles work now? Are you more operational, or are you more the management and sales side of the business?
To be honest, and he won't mind me saying it, his role in the company is very hands off. It's always designed to be. He's done very successful in his property companies,
Mhm.
and this is at the beginning a lot more of a passion project for him. He loves the drink industry basically, and it's something he really wanted to be involved in. So going forwards in the year, as in into 2024. We're going to slowly start to make it so that his role is slightly increased from a sales and marketing point of view. But at the minute, he's sort of like so someone to bounce ideas off, talk through things with, and whatnot. But yeah, we meet once a week where we run through our ideas and run through our plans, and both so we know what's going on and make plans for the next year as well.
Okay, so you've essentially taken the helm of the company for about a year now, is that right?
Yeah, sort of we worked alongside each. Me and Mum worked alongside each other from April
Yeah.
22, and then really from May this year was properly them being fully out. But Mum was we were sort of trying to make it so that Mum could start to step away a little bit as well.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, that's quite an exciting time ahead for you. So,
Yeah.
what would you say have been your biggest learnings as an employer, or as a business owner, since you kind of took the helm on full time on your own?
It's the easiest way of saying it. I've always been quite good at managing my time, but it's an amazing. Well, it's not amazing, but it's this weird concept where it never ends, does it? There's always something to do. There's always the next thing to. Not always bad things and not always good things. There's always something else around the corner that you've got to make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of. So it's really been around that being sort of ready for anything. Not that it's not. There's not time to be complacent.
Yeah.
Well, you can be complacent, but then the business obviously will. will be affected by it as well. So it's just that constant awareness that actually we are always pushing. That was something I really wanted to do coming into the business. Was the first year for me was always to re-establish it following 2 years of COVID and the impact that lockdown had had.
Yeah.
So for me, that was 22 to sort of 2023, and that's what we did. And then this year has really been about actually where's that growth now, and it's been around managing the stuff that's been established and set up while still finding time and places for the growth side of things as well.
So how many hats would you say that you wear in the organization at the moment then?
Cool, multiple. So I do. I'm solely responsible for production. I've got someone that works with me called Dan, who works with me, but the actual making of the product is me. He does the bottling side of things with me. We also have sales hats on, so all trade goes through me with customers, and a lot of the customer facing stuff is me or Dan, who works alongside me, but then with me overseeing Dan. HR, it was always me as well. We have also got a bar, which we obviously run and have different side of things there. Finance is all me
What, a
as
bar that's
well.
open 7 days a week?
But unfortunately, it's open 4 days a week. So, but it's really interesting when we introduced it in September. So it's a really interesting change because we ended up with one business that sort of not stopped, but could stop going into the evening, but then it was instantly replaced by another one. So that time management and the structuring of that become a really big thing. And then we also constantly got one eye on business growth side of things as well. So, for example, we're due to open another bar in February, which we're currently in the process of agreeing the terms on. We will, but in order to do that, we need to up the foundations of what we've got as well. So we need to introduce someone to replace some of my time in the production side of things, or the shows really is the big thing. We go off and do something like 110 shows, food and drink events we did this year. So it's about trying to make sure that the team that are going off to do that have still got the foundations and the values and principles that we've got, so that the rest can grow on that.
Well, we'll come on to values and principles in a minute, but how do you then manage to find time for yourself?
This time of year, it's a lot less. Christmas for us is non-existent. My poor partner, we sort of see each other at the beginning of November, and we see each other at the end of December in the run up to Christmas. But no, I'm quite good at carving out a bit of time where needed. I'm very lucky that I get on with the people that I work with, and it's nice to have a business partner that I get on with as well. So we get that element of social time there. And then, it's just about making sure I make sure that I do shoehorn some time in, even if it's as simple as going for a PT session or gym session at the end of the day to round off a Monday, or set times that playing football on a Monday night, for example. It's just making sure it's there, and it's almost not sticking to it to the detriment of the company, but I think it's sticking to it as far as possible, because actually it's quite important, I think, to take time for yourself as well, because otherwise it's a slippery slope, because there is always something else to do.
There's always something to do, absolutely. So how do you, yeah, I agree with that. There's always something to do in business, but how do you define, and how have you learned to define what your big priorities are versus everything being a priority?
Yeah, and that is that sort of that's taking a little bit longer to get my head around, if I'm honest, when the early days were there. For me, number one priority for me, well, number two, I've got sort of two first priorities, basically, as much as possible about going too over the top of it. Number one, the customer facing stuff has to be on point. For us, ultimately, any form of customer is where our business revolves around. Without them, there's no, the best business in the world, but if your customers don't feel like they're getting the best value and the best treatment, that's not going to be a returning customer base. So it's going to change that security there. And number two, it really is around the product. The quality of our product is strong. That has always been a feature. We don't. It's as simple as making sure we're not running out of anything. We and constantly innovating to try and do new things. So we've got the core principle. Priority number one is making sure we don't run out of anything, because ultimately there's not a company without a product. And number two is making sure that the customers are getting the best experience they can, so that actually they want to come back to us. And after sort of 5-6 years in the business now, alongside new people that come to us, we've got a core sort of group that actually are our returning base because of how the customer service they receive.
So I mean, I'm assuming it's gin that you distill and potentially vodka.
Yeah, gin. We also do a liqueur range. So we've introduced amaretto last year, which has been, or midway through last year, which has been a fantastic addition. We also do things like seasonal liqueur. So we use the forage berries from around the distillery. And then we've got two new products launching next year, which is vodka. And then we're going to launch a spiced rum as well, just to
Oh,
match,
okay.
partly because we've got the bars, so we might as well. Secondly, because there's starting to be a call from it in the industry. So
That was meant to happen 3 years ago, but they got it 3 years too early. So
yeah,
it's come now. Yeah, that was meant to be a big thing 3 years ago. But Spice Rum's coming big.
yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
finally getting there now.
Yeah, it's finally getting there. Cool. So look, you talk quite a bit. You mentioned quite a lot about principles and values. So how have you encapsulated them? How if I was to join your business today, how would I know what the values and the principles of the Heart of Suffolk Distillery are?
So we work very, very closely with any team member that comes in. We are quite a partly given the nature of how the size of us, we've got about on and off around 6, 7-ish people that work for us, and by the middle of 2024, we'll be on around 10,
Mhm.
11 people. Each of those people um, gets basically we start them from the beginning and bring them along the journey with us. So whilst they obviously haven't been with us, they will find out how we've got to where we are. We'll meet with them. We'll spend that time with them. They'll have access to us. They have access to me. They have access to the team, which we've curated underneath us, Tom as well. And it's basically we share the principles of being honest. It's the honesty side of things. It's that integrity as well. We are what we are, as in we're quite straight shooters. There's never anything conceited or underhanded in the business, and we embed that with all the team that work under us. Our supervising staff as well are much the same, and we just make sure that actually they understand where we are, and it's around. Um, we're not overly critical if things go wrong. It's all for us. It's all around learning it. Um, I guess that probably comes from the teaching side of things, but it's not around a criticism. It's not a problem if something goes wrong. It's just an opportunity to learn how actually we do it differently and how we do it in this company.
Yeah.
And it's about making sure it just doesn't not necessarily happen again, but actually next time we learn from it and we build on that.
So have you got those documented down? They've written down somewhere that people can see them, or is it just something that's all in your head?
We have some stuff written down. So we have we do set things like the actual sort of practical side of things, like as simple as how are we opening the shop, how are we opening the bar. That the sort of logistical day-to-day things are written down. We also have quite a few different sort of histories of the distillery in places as well. Different versions, long ones and short ones, basically, so people can see them and they understand them. And a lot of it, though, we find is quite conversational in the sense that it's not changing how people say things as such, but it's changing the delivery of it. So what we don't ever really like when we don't really do a hard sell at shows, for example, we're not really forcing a product on them. We know it's a good product. Um, we're 5 to 6 years in the business suggests that it's a good product, and we want that returning customer base. So it's about sort of bringing the customer on the journey with us, but also the staff that are with us and the team that we've got around us. So it's very much around we produce this over in Bacton. We do 3 or 4 London dry gins. It's not about that, oh, the company I work for does this. It's very much they are part of that journey.
Okay. So it's them taking ownership of the business, be feeling as if
Yeah,
they're feeling they're part of the business rather than an employee of the business.
absolutely. And I feel like that we get a good response from that at shows and from the people as well, because actually they do feel like people. And Dan, 9 times out of 10, when Dan goes off to a show, people continuously think he is. And Busy's very much involved in the production, but people always think that he's one of the owners of it because he's so embedded in it now and it's
Which
so natural to him.
Yeah, which is really interesting. So I mean, obviously, to values it's important, and your principles. But how else do you foster that positive engagement from the people that work for you? What other things do you do?
I think the actual number one thing comes down to the actual recruitment of the right person in the first place. We want those people that are actually going to grow within the business. We want those people that are actually going to take those opportunities that are offered to them, and want to grow with us, and actually by our starting actually at square one and trying to gauge that when we first meet these people. We don't really do interviews, so to speak, for people whenever we advertise a job. It's more of a conversation around it. It's a chat around the job. Are we a right fit for you? And are you a right fit for us? Because ultimately, there's no point if one party's going into it not in the same mindset. It's only going to end one way, and that's
Yeah.
the same with businesses we work with. It's a collaboration for us. It's not necessarily a business relationship. It's a collaboration on how everyone can work together, and we find that with our employees and our team that we've got.
So what sort of things do you do to find out? I mean, I know it's a conversation, but what sort of things you do to find out whether that's a right fit and they fit your values and your principles? What do you
Oh,
what do you-
right, it's such a difficult thing to sort of outlook. It really is just it's that feeling for us. I know it's a bit of a sort of cop out answer, really, but I do feel like you do that whole idea around first impressions and a natural feeling, your gut reaction to people. That is actually something that carries quite a lot of weight in our sort of process, because you do get a natural feel of something. When I'm talking to someone, what I'm thinking is actually, am I confident? If I was a customer, would I be comfortable and confident talking to you now? Would I feel like I was in a safe pair of hands? And if I feel like as a customer I'd be in a safe pair of hands, actually I can assume that they're in a safe pair of hands to send off to a show and send off to a customer facing environment.
So I suppose you've been in business and you're growing. So as
Mm-hmm.
you grow, the time available for you to recruit everybody is going to diminish,
Uh, yes and no.
right?
That is something we will always take ownership of. We ultimately, because the business is um, us, the business not started, but it's taken over with me and Tom. Me or Tom will be in at least one of us will be in every interview. We trust each other in that process as well as business partners, and we trust each other's judge of character as well. And as a result of that, one of us will always be there, and that's actually something we're quite sort of firm on,
Okay.
because what we try as much as possible as well is, depending on what the role is, the person that will directly manage that person will be in the interviews as well. So we're trying to almost pass on and embed that gut feeling, that reaction to that person into the team who will actually work alongside the new person we're recruiting. So we've got a distillery apprentice up at the minute as a vacancy, who will work closely with Dan. So as a result, when we have an interview, I will, because it's sort of replacing a big chunk of my role, it'll be me that does that, but I'll do it alongside Dan, because actually he's the one that's going to be guiding them through their time with us on the whole.
See, I mean, it's a bit of a question. I mean, you talk a lot about gut feeling, which is fine, um, but gut feeling is normally triggered by behavior or a word or a phrase or a statement. So, do you not think? I mean, it's a bit of a challenge here, I suppose, in some respects, to make it easier. You and Tom could sit down and actually write down what are the behaviors and the words and the statements that trigger that gut feeling.
Yeah, to be fair, at the minute, because we're doing a lot of the because both of us do a lot of the recruitment together, it's quite fortunate because we both know where each other's minds are at.
Mm.
But yeah, it is possible as well, because I will meet with, in the same way that actually we'll verbally do it, is I'll meet with Dan beforehand, and
Yeah.
I sort of say to him, like, this is what I sort of look for, this is how I sort of do it. Or when we meet with we're just appointed a bar manager, so me and Tom knew roughly what we wanted from them.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is something that probably going forwards we'll probably start to embed around a little bit more, because we're going to try and, our big thing is the improvement within the team. We
Yeah.
love sort of growing from within. So
Yeah.
actually, if we continue to do that, that's amazing. And people tend to like that and tend to stay. And there's a reward both ways there.
Yeah, absolutely. If they can see it, you can see this career progression for them, then they're more likely going to grow with the business without a doubt. So that's a great thing, great attribute to have within the company. So what do you attribute your growth to over the last year or so?
Um, I probably, if I had to put it down to one thing, I'd say some calculated risk taking. Um, calculated risk taken and a slight change in the business structure, and I mean that in the positive sense.
Okay.
For mum and dad, it was always a passion project. It was always something they really enjoyed doing. They never went into it to make it into a big company. If that was a byproduct, that was a wonderful outcome.
Yeah.
Um, I come into it like I say, leaving a career that I'd sort of trained for, done for 6 years, got relatively far in as well. So for me, if I was coming into it, what I didn't want to do was come into it and leave it as it was. So that's where my first step towards expansion started. And constantly looking at where those different avenues are and where those different sources of income could be, and different ways to advertise us effectively. So that was that first bit. And then with that change in structure from mum and dad stepping away because they were ready, that was the right time for them to step away and start to think about winding down
Yeah.
and taking a bit more time for themselves. It's then got me and someone Tom, who's a couple of years younger than me, have both got that very driven mindset, and both are happy to take a calculated risk and take a go on something. Um, but it is a very calculated risk taking exercise. It's not a risk for risk's sake.
So I suppose you say that you've been very more commercially focused around the business in terms of driving its growth rather than the business was running well and it was quite stable before. You're
Yeah,
trying to agitate it and move it forward.
yeah, because there's no denying it was an established business that was doing well,
Yeah.
um, but it was very much it was revolved around or focused around maybe um, us in the middle doing 99.9% of the work in the business as opposed to on the business.
Yeah.
So by being able to step away and go a bit, bring a team in, we almost took a bit of a step back to take that step forwards. So we
Yeah.
almost went, right, we're in a secure position. Let's rock the boat a little bit and bring someone in full time to work alongside us,
Yeah.
which will then free me up, which then frees Tom up because we can then start doing that bit growth on the business, not just in it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, get it. Absolutely. Makes absolute sense. So to wrap things up, the final question for me today is where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Um, that seems to change every single time me and Tom have a meeting, to be honest. But no, we've got a good sort of core idea of where we want it to be. Number one, we want it to be quite an established brand. And I think we're starting to make those waves towards that.
Yeah.
We have got, like I say, one bar already. We've got another one in the pipeline, and we'd like it to be that we've got a couple of 2 to 3, maybe 4 bars showcasing our brand
Yeah.
and showcasing everything we can do. We'd both like to be in a position where actually the majority of our time can be working on the business alongside each other,
Yeah.
which, if our plan for 2024 sort of works, will stand us in very good stead for.
Yeah.
And we actually almost want to do a bit of an event side of things as well. We've got a lot of the framework for it. We know we're starting to launch farmers markets, for example, starting to launch drinks events and drinks festivals, but keeping that core value of that local, that there's a lot that can be done in Suffolk. I think that sometimes people can be quick to jump further afield because it feels like there's more there when you haven't quite tapped the resource and used everything that's available to us. So it's really about becoming that quite established Suffolk name and brand effectively.
No, I mean, that sounds like you've got a real exciting 5 years ahead of you, Ryan. Absolutely, and some of the foundations you're putting in place here all sound absolutely right. You talk about working on the business, not in the business, which is absolutely the right thing to be doing. So yeah, I mean, it sounds really exciting. I mean, first year, obviously flying. Second, third, fourth year looks as if you're really, really going to be flying hard with Tom to take it to new dizzy heights.
Yes, yeah, I was going to say it's all part of the big plans, but seem to be the embedding seems to be going well. So actually, because we've done that year, because we haven't rushed anything too soon,
Yeah.
we've left that foundation there to grow on, which is good.
Well, as long as you've got a bit of excitement and fear at the same time, then it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Yes, yeah, there
That's
is a
all,
good combination of that.
all I'm going to say. You're going to need that combination. But look,
Yeah,
this has been fantastic, Ryan, and thank you very ever so much for giving us the time today and telling us about your story and your future plans for the distillery. Sounds fantastic. So thank you very much, and I obviously look forward to seeing you again soon.
yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me.